Hi, everyone. Welcome to ABC News Live. I'm Diane Macedo. Two top stories today. First, we're going to start off in Nashville, where a massive manhunt is underway. Police are searching for two men they called cold-blooded killers. We're also following the president this morning, very active on Twitter after some reports that the White House attorney is cooperating with the special counsel. As you can imagine, the president's not happy about that. So we'll have the latest on those stories. But first, here are your top headlines.
Actress Asia Argento is accused of paying off a young actor who accused her of sexual misconduct. The New York Times says Argento paid Jimmy Bennett nearly $400,000 to settle the case. Pope Francis has just put out a letter to Catholics around the world condemning sexual assault by priests and demanding accountability. No one's hurt after someone fired shots at the U.S. Embassy in the capital of Turkey this morning. Police in Ankara say 6 shots were fired, 3 hit a gate and a window. Tensions between Turkey and the U.S. have been on the rise over the detention of an American pastor and rising tariffs. Families separated by the Korean War have been reuniting today for a short time. A group of elderly South Koreans is now in North Korea for 3 days of visits. And now you can own a Bond car. Aston Martin is building 25 copies of the Bond car from Goldfinger. They even include the famous rotating license plate. Asking price, $3.5 million.
Welcome back to ABC News Live. We're going to start things off in Nashville with that manhunt now underway. After a series of shootings, police say they're searching for 2 men they're calling cold-blooded killers, and ABC's Steve Osunsami is there. Steve, why do they believe that these shootings are linked? What's leading them to that?
Well, they're not entirely sure that they're linked. They believe that they're linked. It appears that most of these shootings are robberies, and in at least 2 of the cases, police believe that 2 suspects who were seen in surveillance video driving a black Chevy sedan were seen speeding away from the scene. Also, in a couple of these incidents, the people who were robbed, their belongings were thrown into the streets. There were 3 people who were killed in the last 9 days. Another woman barely survived. But those are the main reasons why they think these are connected, Diane.
Any inclination on a motive here or who they might be looking for in these suspects?
Well, they're only describing the suspects vaguely. These vague descriptions: 2 black men, one of them who had dreadlocks, and these are again vague descriptions of the suspects. They believe that these are robberies. That's what they think has happened here. There's only one case that they're not quite sure if it was a robbery, and that was the shooting that took place, I think, more than a week ago. It was a woman who was walking her dog who was shot in the back. She also happens to be the wife of a crew member for the band One Republic, and that band is speaking out this morning, concerned about these shootings. Also, they're starting a GoFundMe page for the victims.
So, Steve, it sounds like there's a kind of a wide array of victims here. Do they think this was all random?
Random in as much as we're talking about targets of opportunity for robbers. And you're right, a wide array of victims. But all of these incidents happen within a few miles of each other in East Nashville. And the other thing, too, is the victims, of course, don't know each other. There were 4 people who were approached as they were leaving a bar one night. 2 of those people were shot. Another man who's African-American, a completely different victim from the others, he was shot on the way to a bus stop. So that's what's sort of random about this is the different victims. And police are so concerned that they're actually encouraging people here to walk in groups and to be on the lookout. Pay attention.
How is the community reacting to all this? This must be terrifying.
I think people are frightened, especially at night. It's definitely something that people are concerned about. You know, as I heard one of the police officers say, You know, these robbers clearly don't value life. They're calling them cold-blooded killers, and even though they may be after a wallet or a watch, they'll still take your life for it. So that's a frightening thing for residents here.
It is indeed. All right, Steve Osunsami there for us in Nashville, Tennessee. Steve, thank you. Stay safe. And now to the latest in the Russia investigation. President Trump was sounding off on Twitter this morning after reports that a White House attorney has been cooperating extensively with the special counsel. Karen Travers is at the White House for us, keeping track of all of that. Active morning for you, Karen.
A lot of tweets this morning, Diane. It's hard to pick where to start, but the president was weighing in after that report over the weekend from the New York Times that White House counsel Don McGhan has spoken extensively with Robert Mueller and his team. We confirmed through sources that McGhan spoke at least 3 times to the special counsel's team, and the president says on Twitter this morning it was for more than 30 hours and that he did it only with his approval for purposes of transparency. That said, the president said anybody who has to have that long of an interview, 30 hours, he says, when there's no Russian collusion, is just someone looking for trouble, referring to the special counsel Robert Mueller. So this was a big back and forth over the weekend of how much the president's legal team knew about what Don McGhan has said to Robert Mueller, but the president certainly saying that he knew all along that McGhan was cooperating and that he did it because he has nothing to hide.
Any kind of inclination as to what kind of information the special counsel is looking for here?
Sources tell us that Robert Mueller wanted to talk to Don McGhan about a couple of things. First, the firing of Jim Comey back in May of 2017, and also any involvement that McGhan had or awareness of Attorney General Jeff Sessions' decision to recuse himself from the Russia investigation. Those two things certainly would seem to imply that it's about the questions of obstruction of justice by President Trump, not the original issue of collusion. The president, of course, has insisted repeatedly there has been no obstruction of justice. He says he fights back when he has to, but that he hasn't done anything criminal and he has nothing to hide. Another thing, Diane, that was really interesting this morning, the president frequently sounds off on the Russia probe in general. He's gone after Mueller's team. He called them today a national disgrace. He's referred to them as angry Democrats. But today, Diane, he went after Robert Mueller personally, perhaps the strongest he's been when it comes to Robert Mueller himself. He called him disgraced and discredited and you know, he's called him conflicted before, but for the most part he seems to have held back on those personal slams of Mueller. This is certainly an interesting new line from the president and perhaps a sign that he's going to continue going very tough on Robert Mueller himself.
And it sounds like there's some new developments in the back and forth over the president revoking the security clearance of the former CIA director, Brennan, as well. What's going on there?
President Trump essentially saying to John Brennan this morning, bring it on, after the former CIA director said over the weekend that he would be willing to take the president to court to prevent the administration from revoking the security clearances of current and former government officials, as they did to him last weekend. Brennan says he would do this to prevent further abuses. Well, the president said today he hopes that John Brennan brings a lawsuit, because then it would be easy to see all of his texts, his documents, his records to show the poor job that he says Brennan did and his own involvement in the Mueller rigged witch hunt. This is something that the administration continues to defend. You had National Security Advisor John Bolton over the weekend telling ABC's Martha Raddatz that they will consider perhaps looking at the entire process of former officials like a John Brennan having a security clearance. You had John Bolton say over the weekend that Brennan politicized intelligence, but he couldn't come up with any specific examples of when he actually misused classified information.
All right, never a dull moment. And Karen, I know the First Lady has her own conference going on this morning. What's up with that?
She was actually talking about social media, cyberbullying. So at the same time as her husband, the president, was on quite a bit of a tweet storm this morning, the First Lady was talking about this issue, and one line stood out to a lot of reporters. The First Lady said, let's face it, most children are more aware of the benefits and pitfalls of social media than some adults. So maybe she's sending a bit of a message there that some people need to be more careful about what they tweet, how they tweet, and perhaps how much they tweet.
Every time she talks about this topic, there's so much reading between the lines that everyone's trying to figure out if she's sending some sort of secret message. But good for her for spreading the positive message, and at least the White House is keeping us entertained with all the rest. Karen Travers there from the White House lawn. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
And as the president rails against the Russia investigation, Robert Mueller's case against his former campaign chair, Paul Manafort, enters the third day of jury deliberations. Catherine Falders is in Alexandria, Virginia, following all of that. Catherine, what's the latest?
Hey there, Diane. You just saw the lead attorney, Kevin Downing, walk out of that courtroom, a bunch of reporters chasing him there. But yeah, the latest here is that the jury is in day 3 of their deliberations. The judge sent them away this morning around 9:30, 10 to begin another day of this. So you can see behind me the courthouse and all those cameras staking him out over there. So the real question is, how will we get information about a verdict out of this court? Well, you see all the cameras and you see that front door over there. Well, that information is going to come running out on yellow legal pads. No phones in the court, no electronics. So we could expect a verdict to come as soon as today. But look, the defense, they're feeling pretty good about this, Diane.
And one of the big things we look for in trying to, figure out if we can get a sneak peek at what the jury's thinking is what they asked for. What have they asked for so far?
Yeah, so last week on Thursday, they submitted 4 questions to the judge, and one was to redefine reasonable doubt, to which the judge brought them in, redefined that for them, in addition to 3 other questions that they had. And the defense attorneys told me that they viewed this as a good thing, that the jury is poring over this evidence, that they have a lot of questions that they want addressed. But on Friday, they also asked to leave relatively early. They submitted what is called a, quote, note to the court, and they said that they would be finished deliberating by Friday. But there is so much evidence in this case they have to pore over. 388 exhibits. One of those, Diane, is 700 pages long. So they also requested a bigger room so that the evidence carts could be carted in. They're actually using their break room instead, which is much larger.
They have a lot of paperwork to go through. That is understandable. And what are we expecting when the verdict does come down? What's the protocol there?
Yeah, so when the verdict does come down, the jurors have a 4-page sheet, and it's a verdict sheet, and it essentially has all 18 counts, in this case, of tax fraud and bank fraud, and it will say not guilty or guilty, and they will put a check mark next to them. So once that happens, the judge will read it out count by count, and we have about 10 people up in that courtroom and in the overflow room, up there on the 9th floor, all the way up there, so it's a little bit of a trek to get down. But once the verdict comes in, that will come running out the door to us, and we will get that in paper form. So that's how we will be notified when and if a verdict comes today.
All right. Catherine Falders in Alexandria, Virginia for us. Catherine, we'll let you go so you can go chase that attorney now, too. Thanks, Catherine. And now to that controversy over in California after immigration officials detained a man who was driving his wife, his pregnant wife, to the hospital. He was detained. She was left to drive herself to the hospital. But now officials say they had a good reason to pull them over and to take him into custody. Marcy Gonzalez has that story for us from Orange, California.
Hey, Diane. Yeah, this is the detention facility where that father is being held. And give you some more of the backstory. He and his wife were on their way to the hospital for a scheduled C-section, getting ready to deliver their baby. They pull into a gas station, and you can see it in the surveillance video. Their vehicle is surrounded by SUVs. Immigration officials get out. They put this guy, Joel Aronalada, into handcuffs. They take him into custody. And then you see his wife in surveillance video crying. She was left alone at that gas station. She says she had to drive herself to the hospital. She says that she asked the agents why they were taking her husband into custody, and she says she was told it was because someone reported them. So a few days later, ICE put out a statement explaining that they took Aronalada into custody because he was in the U.S. illegally from Mexico. Then, hours after that statement, they sent an update saying he was arrested because he's wanted on homicide charges in Mexico. Now, his attorney says that he denies those accusations. He's questioning the validity, and he's questioning the timing of all of this. We reached out to officials in Mexico. They say they have no record of any warrant out for Aronalada. His attorney is now filing a motion asking that he be released from this detention facility on bond so he can be with his family. ICE says they are moving forward with proceedings, though, to have him deported. Diane?
All right, such a bizarre case. Marcy Gonzalez there from Orange, California. Thanks, Marcy. Meanwhile, in Colorado, a father has confessed to killing his wife and 2 daughters and is expected to be formally charged today. This as a friend who says she was the last person to see that mother alive is now speaking exclusively to our Clayton Sandell. Clayton's in Frederick, Colorado. And Clayton, what is this friend telling you?
Yeah, this friend is Nicole Atkinson. She is the person, as you said, that was the last friend to see Shanann Watts when she dropped her off right in front of this house, the family home here, 2 a.m. last Monday. And she's telling us that she was also the first one to call police on that Monday because Shanann was supposed to go to an OBGYN appointment. She was 15 weeks pregnant, rather, and missed that appointment. She also was not returning any texts that day, and so Nicole became very worried. She says that one of the things she did was call Shanann's husband, Chris Watts, and she says he seemed suspiciously nonchalant that his wife and 2 daughters appeared to be missing. His excuse, she said, was that Shanann had left here to go on a play date with her daughters with somebody else, and that's why she wasn't here. Nicole says she didn't really buy that story because when they came here to check on Shanann and the girls, they actually found some surveillance video from a neighbor's garage that saw this driveway. And the interesting thing about this surveillance video is that it shows Shanann being dropped off at about 2 a.m. here at the house. Then it shows Chris Watts leaving in his work truck right from this garage and heading out. And then it shows Nicole arriving again later in the morning to check on Shanann. So what that tells her is that there was no video showing Shanann leaving, which is what Chris Watts said she did. And Nicole says that for her to have left, she would have had to take her 2 daughters, 15 weeks pregnant, go out the back door, over the fence, and leave. And she says she just did not buy that story.
All right. Police, no doubt, are combing through that video and lots of other evidence. What are we expecting from these charges today? What's the latest in the investigation as well?
Yeah, so Chris Watts, as you said, he confessed allegedly to this crime. He's been in jail for the last few days. The formal charges are expected to be filed by the DA today, and we're hoping that once that happens, the arrest affidavit, some of the other court documents will be unsealed, and we'll be able to learn a lot more about this case. Of course, the big question is motive. Why did this happen? So we're hoping some of these documents will reveal some of that. Now, Nicole did talk about the marriage between Shanann and Chris, and she did say that, while there is clearly no reason to allegedly murder your entire family, she says that they had been having some marriage trouble and that Chris's behavior had recently changed. Take a listen.
He wasn't being the loving Chris that he normally was. He wasn't touching or hugging or doing stuff like that.
Did she suspect he might have been cheating?
I think she entertained the idea, yes.
So you can see just what an impact this has had on this community. This memorial has grown over the last few days. People have left stuffed animals, candles, some notes. If you walk over here and take a look at the porch steps here, there was a big candlelight vigil here over the weekend. So this is just an absolutely terrible crime that has shattered this community here. Diane? Absolutely,
and especially when you're trying to figure out a motive, the fact that the daughters were involved in this just makes this all that much more horrible. How is their town reacting to this?
Yeah, it's just been awful. I mean, we've been here all morning, and we've seen a few people come by leaving candles, leaving all of these notes, and it's just, as you can imagine, hard to understand. When we talked to Nicole, she said, I can understand a husband and wife having a disagreement and that maybe escalating into something violent, but what's just so hard for people here to understand is why these 2 children, why Celeste and Bella, who were only 3 and 4 years old, who idolized their father. If you watch some of these Facebook videos that Shanann posted, they thought he was their hero. So it's been tough on this community, as you can imagine.
I bet people will be asking why for a long time, no matter what explanation we're given for that. That's Clayton Sandell for us in Frederick, Colorado. Thanks so much, Clayton. And finally, we're going to end things off with the weather here. Powerful storms are ripping through the heartland. 7 twisters reported in the Midwest. Meanwhile, the East is dealing with flash flooding emergencies. Ginger Z has our forecast for us. Ginger?
Diane, thank you. Let's start with the tornadoes. So Sunday alone, 5 reported tornadoes from Oklahoma through Missouri. This one in northeastern Oklahoma in Mays. You can see the debris flying there. That storm chaser getting us really up close and personal. Again, this is a powerful system that came from that low right there. It really looks more like something we'd see in May versus late August. Late summer doesn't usually have this type of power, but with this will not only come the potential for severe weather again, but flash flooding. You can see some of the green spots on the map from Wisconsin to New Orleans. A lot of lift in this, a lot of tropical moisture, and along that cold front is where we end up seeing some of the heaviest rain in western Tennessee, a little bullseye there just east of Detroit into Canada. But the severe storms forecast, so where do you see damaging wind and even the potential for a tornado today? It would be in southern Indiana, western Kentucky and Tennessee, and northern Mississippi. All of the areas that you see highlighted there, the boot of Missouri will be included as well as Arkansas. And then you slide that to the east, and Tuesday afternoon and evening, you really instigate the atmosphere and get it going with Erie, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., and Charlottesville, all included in the potential for, by that point, likely damaging winds as those storms move through. Let's talk then about what's happening in the wildfires. Still so many of them burning, but it's the air quality. As the winds shifted back to the north and northeast, it traps some of the air. And you see Spokane, Washington, at one point on Sunday, deemed hazardous. Hazardous is at the highest level, meaning the worst air quality, and that is for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are or if you have asthma or not, you're going to be affected by that air. So you have air quality alerts from Oregon through Washington State, Idaho, even into Helena and all of Montana because of not just the fires, but the winds have shifted and the winds are higher. So you're going to see some of the red flag warnings peaking because of the conditions there. So if it's not one thing, it is another out for the west. And of course, we'll be tracking that storm here in the east.
All right, Ginger, thanks for keeping an eye on things for us. And that does it for us here at ABC News Live. But remember, you can check out your headlines all day long at abcnews.com or at your ABC News app. For ABC News Live, I'm Diane Macedo. Have a great day, everyone.